Welcome to ALEST Talk with Jason Elder. It's like coffee with an ALEST, but there's no actual coffee. Each episode, we interviewed an expert in the field of law enforcement analysis to share their career-defining stories and to get their insights on the world. Please join us on recognizing and learning from these brilliant minds as we define the law enforcement analysis profession one episode at a time.
Thank you for joining me. I hope many aspects of your life are progressing. My name is Jason Elder, and today our guest has 20 plus years of law enforcement analysis experience. She's held analyst and supervisor roles with the Massachusetts State Police. She was also a senior crime analyst with the NYPD. She's a former president of MACA, the Massachusetts Association of Crime Analysts. She currently works for the International Association of Directors of Law Enforcement Standards and Training, focusing on data-driven approaches to crime and traffic safety, also known as Ddax. Please welcome Deb Piehl. Deb, how we doing?
I'm great. Thank you for that introduction.
Man, those abbreviations, they get pretty long and wordy. I hope I got it right, though.
You did.
So, all right. Well, there's so much I want to go over with you today. So let's get started. My first question is how did you discover the law enforcement analysis profession?
Well, I was lucky enough to come out of college and immediately get a job in my major, which was journalism and political science at the time. So I started my career days as a reporter for a local newspaper. That process, involved getting, connected and familiar with all of the local police chiefs and the local departments and getting a sense of what was going on across this 6-town region. And the more that I did of that, and the more I reported on just, standard police related stories, I just became interested in the whole field and into gaining a deeper understanding of how policing was done, how criminal justice really worked. And so I went and got a graduate degree, ultimately got a job with the Newton, Massachusetts Police Department. And Newton is right outside of Boston, about a 175-man department at the time. I was their grant writer. I initially assisted with CALIA accreditation and then eventually became the accreditation manager and became director of planning and research there in Newton. And it was a great start in the field.
So studying journalism in undergrad, how did that help you get into the profession?
Well, it's kind of funny because I started my undergrad pursuing a degree in computer technology. And I got a little freaked out by the math that was involved at the time. I'm not even sure why, because, obviously the field I ended up in is much closer to that. But so I bailed on that and became a journalism and political science major. Really, it ultimately was a good career move because, a good portion of that focused on writing and more writing, being able to ask questions and be confident in asking questions. I realized through that process that I'm not a half bad writer. And, no matter what you do in life, pretty much, it is a great benefit to be able to write. And so I have been able to do that along the way. I had great fun as a reporter. It's really just, go to work and start talking to people and asking questions and just being interested in what's going on around you. And so I think it was a good start to the career that I really love, which is being a crime analyst, of course, but policing. I just love the profession of policing. I like to contribute where I can. And I think I've been, very blessed with a very broad career. And all of those experiences really come back to helping me to be a better analyst and at least be the best that I can be. Yeah. Somewhere there was some kismet to it all, some destiny to it all, even if I couldn't always see it at the time.
I would think the idea that they probably really stress this in journalism studies is the idea of knowing and keeping your resources. And I know that as an analyst, you sometimes learn the hard way where I'd have some data that I was presenting or in a report, and somebody would ask me, it's like, okay, well, where is this from? And I kind of would freeze, and I'm like, oh, where did that come from? So that idea of the importance of, as we're dealing with so much data, just keeping in track of it.
Well, I don't know if my journalism training really helped me to be more organized in that way. I think it was much like you, where it was a process of finally smartening up after you get those questions enough times. I thought, I really should start documenting all of this better and being better organized about my data. It's still an evolving process.
So you eventually become an analyst with the Massachusetts State Police. What were some initial duties that you were doing? What were you responsible for?
I spent 8+ years at Nypd, had a great time. I think also having that experience of being an accreditation manager for CLIA accreditation, so the national accreditation, was a great experience. And again, you gave me a foundation for moving forward more specifically on analysis, because accreditation really forces you to get into things that the average analyst might not be involved with. There are 400 some odd plus standards that involve everything from how bright are your exit signs, how secure are your holding cells, how do you schedule your dispatch personnel, just really obscure things to a crime analyst that you might not be involved with, training records and curriculum and all those things. So being the accreditation manager gave me that real opportunity to get to know everybody, to get into a lot of that stuff. My writing skills helped me with policies and procedures that constantly needed updating. And the agency really took it seriously. But for anyone who's been involved in accreditation, it's like a marathon, and you only need to do so many of those before you've felt like you've accomplished the race. And so, and I was also responsible for UCR reporting and some basic analysis functions. After about 8 years there, the timing was great when fusion centers were being set up all around the country. And here in Massachusetts, our fusion center, the Commonwealth Fusion Center, was and still is affiliated with the Mass State Police. They staff it, they support it, they run it. So I applied to that position, and I was hired as an Intel analyst supervisor. So that was great fun. I worked a 3 to 11 shift. And, those were the days when they really thought that fusion centers could potentially be responsible for, locating bin Laden, really into the fight against terrorism. And so I spent, the eve shift chasing down Intel. And then one day I was told that the colonel wanted to see me. And I figured this must be how they fire people, because I didn't know where the colonel's office was. I didn't know anything about that.
Well, you didn't find bin Laden, so it's
I didn't find him either.
It's a gots to go situation.
So, and I could wear jeans to work on those days because it's an eve shift, and so I was not prepared to meet the colonel.
Yeah.
But I did. Got directions to his office. He wanted to put in place a Compstat process, and I had done some of that in Newton, and he had been told I had some experience in that realm. And we were about to send a large contingent of troopers out to the Springfield, Mass area to assist Springfield PD. Springfield is our third largest city in the state and just had at the time a lot of issues, a lot of financial problems, lots of drugs and guns and crime going up and down the East Coast through Springfield. Then Governor Romney did not want to just send a bunch of troopers out, not have any good sense of what they were accomplishing. So, the colonel asked me how I felt about just, going out to Springfield PD. I was told they would give me a desk and a computer. I would design a process where I would keep track of what the troopers were accomplishing in cooperation with Springfield PD. And so I did that. It was a really unique experience, a fun experience. Springfield PD was very accommodating. the troopers loved it. It was really one of their first exposures to some traditional crime analysis. I made them a bunch of maps that they had never seen before. And it gave me an opportunity to pull together data from a local PD and from the state police, which is still a challenge today in most places, to really see what each agency was responding to, where were they collaborating, what did they have to share. And I spent about a year and a half doing that.
So is that something where you're presenting regularly at each meeting, or are you coordinating who's going to speak and what everybody's going to talk about and report on?
I had a little bit of experience with Compstat at Newton. They had hired a retired inspector from NYPD to be the chief. And so he brought with him some NYPD versions of Compstat, obviously in an agency not even a tenth of the size. So the volume was different, the processes were different. But I had been exposed to a sense of how that would work. And so I would prepare all the analysis. The chief liked to go through it ahead of time. I would point out, what I thought the issues were, where I thought things were going well, things that I thought he needed to address, and was very involved in that way. And then, the chief ran the meeting. I would get questions as needed, but by no means was it an analyst-driven process. So I just brought pretty much the same thing to Springfield. I worked with the Springfield PD command and the state police command about, some of the things we would talk about. At the time, I didn't think too much of it, but we did regularly have the governor attending. We would have the public safety director attending. It was a pretty, high level audience. Somehow or another, it all worked well. The whole thing went pretty well. And I can't say it's because of, any grand plan that I had. It just all seemed to flow okay.
So when you said it worked out well, what was the measurement? Was there certain indicators at Springfield you were trying to improve on?
Yes, there were. I took some time to get a sense of at least part one crime in Springfield and what we could know about it, what we were, capable of putting into, kind of a weekly Compstat report. And, getting a sense of the ups and downs. We measured everything in 7-day, 28-day, and year-to-date timeframes, looked at how things were evolving at a very, basic level at that time. But there was certainly plenty for everybody to talk about. And so obviously our goal was to reduce crime, but also, goal of the process was to really try to create this collaborative environment that had not been there before. Typically, when the state is called in, they just send a bunch of personnel, and that personnel will maybe make a lot of arrests, serve a bunch of warrants, do whatever and go home. But there was a vision of those around me that this would be, more of a longer term thing, and perhaps, evolve into better relationships between the state police and local police. There were all these different elements to the whole process, and I think it was the beginning of better things and the beginning of, looking at how to better use analysis in a way that provides consistent quantitative and qualitative information to those who need it. That has really, stuck with me over the years, really striving for consistency in analysis and, then efficiency, so that you have a really good sense at any given moment of what's going on out there, what the current issues are. And then the goal would be to really build that up, be looking at patterns, things like that. So in those days, I had this this grand idea that I had some idea that what I was doing. But when I look back at it, I managed to fake it a lot, I think, or I really did think that I had some idea what I was doing.
They say, fake it until you make it, right?
Yeah. And so I do think that not me, the whole process was able to help the city of Springfield, get on better footing, to, get the PD some resources that it needed. And, over time, they've built a very successful crime analysis unit out there that does great work. Excellent. So I like to think that the very beginnings of that happened, back 15 or so years ago when we pulled that operation together.
Nice. When I think of consistency in crime data, I automatically think about data issues and the trying to get around getting data entered in a consistent manner, because it's garbage in, garbage out kind of thing. And if you're going to be consistent, you can't be correcting stuff at the reporting stages. In order to be consistent, was it that at that data entry point that you had, did you have data issues, and was that the focus?
We did absolutely have data issues, because at that time, the records management system they were using really treated incidents and arrests as these separate, unrelated events. So within that, you ended up with an awful lot of duplication, just a good amount of just a data mess that did require, lots of just what so many analysts are struggling with, an awful lot of cleaning and just trying to get things straight and make sure you're not missing things. And in that sense, it was, very traditional issues that I think are still plaguing the crime analysis profession now. I think it's a public safety issue. To me, it's a travesty almost where we are in 2021 when it comes to data. Certainly there are agencies out there that handle all of this very, very well, prioritize quality report writing and prioritize just the whole process of data collection and analysis. But I think there are many, many more agencies that are relying on analysts predominantly to just do a lot of manual labor over that cleaning process. It's not a good way to do things. It's inefficient. I think there are really, really good analysts that are forced to spend an awful lot of time on that process. And certainly they've developed systems and processes to make it as efficient as possible. But I encourage all analysts to really try to get that stuff addressed at the source. And so often it's simple things, like it's critically important to have an understanding of the data entry process that starts in dispatch. When a call taker or dispatcher answers that phone, that's the start of the data collection process. The analyst doesn't start the data collection process. The agency does. It starts when the phone rings. Often, or always really, that data entry process and the screen that a dispatcher looks at is very different from what the report entry screen or the front end that analysts are used to looking at. It works differently. There's many other fields. There's many more fields dealing with locations and dates and times and all of that. And it's important to have an understanding of how that works and try to see where some of these data quality issues start at that very beginning. Often it's because someone at some time told dispatch for communications, whatever your agency calls it, told them to do things this way, perhaps told them to identify intersections in this way or to enter final addresses in this way. And, very often that's not correct, but no one was thinking about the impact on data. So often, that can be addressed and fixed and then supported through a process of exception reports so that you can see who is making the same mistakes over and over again, try to figure out what is the problem there, what are the issues, and start to address some of those data quality issues at the very source and continue to do that as it moves along the process. Report review is critical. Agencies need to create a culture where that report review process is valued and expected. And, that really helps it to flow along so that when it finally gets to the analyst, and by finally, I still mean in a timely manner, a lot of that basic stuff is dealt with already. It's about using the technology available to its full capacity. Even if you think you have the worst CAD or RMS system, it's probably capable of more than you realize, at least in that data quality sense. And so making sure that those validation rules are followed, all of that.
Yeah. It sounds like you almost need a Compstat for data flow.
Really, you do.
We can call it data stat. Trademark that. We're going to trademark that.
That is pretty good. I've never heard that term. I'll write that down. You just need someone that understands that you need to start looking at it at the very, very beginning front end. And some of the solutions are simple then. They're not so simple by the time it gets to the analyst.
There's a lot to it. And I just even think back of fighting with addresses or fields that were open, enter in whatever they wanted, freestyle. That was a challenge because misspellings and typos and all that. And then I was just like, all right, well, the solution is have a set list. So they choose from a certain number of selections. But then there's certain fields where the number of selections is too many, 50 or 100 or whatever it is. And then the data entry person's just like whatever one they remembered or the one they liked the most, they would apply to. no matter what. And so to try to get through that whole thing and have it pass the testing process. So it is, as you said, it's not an easy issue. It's not something that there's a straight number of rules on. It takes a lot of effort to make sure the data is right. So let's move on now to you joining the NYPD. How did that all come about?
Again, I know I keep saying this, but I've just been very blessed in my career. I became a William Bratton groupie even before my crime analysis career started. He had applied to be commissioner of Boston PD. And one of the local chiefs that I was friendly with happened to have the Boston Globe, and the Globe had done a spread on the top 5 finalists for the commissioner's position. Bratton had articulated, the kind of the intention of the Compstat process, just his, vision that if you keep track of crimes, you can, measure your progress at addressing it. And he really believed that police could have an impact on crime. When I was looking at that, the local chief said, this guy Bratton has a lot of good ideas. And at the time I thought, okay, if you say so, that doesn't sound especially revolutionary to me to just keep track of things, but sure, it sounds like a good idea. Ultimately he got the job and I started watching his career. And he's from Massachusetts. I'm from Massachusetts. The brain trust that he worked with up to this day still was also from Massachusetts, a man named Bob Wasserman, along with Dr. Kelling and a few others, really saw promise in Bratton and supported him from the time he was a sergeant at Boston PD and followed him through his career. And I was lucky enough to meet Mr. Wasserman and work with him. And I think I continued to amuse him. But he, introduced me to a lot of people, including, Dr. Kelling. So whatever chance I got, I would, say hello to Commissioner Bratton, at conferences or wherever I saw him. And he was always very, very gracious to me, accommodating. And so, make a long story short, when he and his team went back to NYPD for his second term, he asked if I wanted to come along. And so, of course, I jumped at that opportunity. It was absolutely the adventure of my career. It is an incredible agency, an incredible place, and proof that the things we just talked about in terms of data quality and creating a culture of valuing data and analysis and quality report writing and all of that is critical. NYPD is truly an analysis-driven agency. The systems they have in place and the dedication and the resources they devote to data quality is truly awe-inspiring. Yeah, I'm speechless about what they accomplish as an agency. It's incredible to see. I just learned, so much in my time there. NYPD is absolutely obsessed with patterns. I am now obsessed with patterns, and I think that would be a huge step forward for many agencies to develop that and to value the identification of patterns. In order to do that, you have to address your data quality issues.
So would you say that it was easier to find patterns with the NYPD data as opposed to the data you were working with in Massachusetts?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Because, well, for a whole bunch of reasons, but at its foundation, first of all, NYPD does demand data quality. Their cops have to choose from a drop-down list of incident codes like you can't imagine. I mean, there's probably over 100 different literal descriptions for larcenies, maybe 50 or so for burglaries, 25 or so for robberies, because that's how you make patterns, is by being that specific about, what kind of incident you're responding to, what the report is about, and then just a very detailed reports. And they take that seriously. They know that they have to do quality reports. That doesn't mean that they're long or that they're, every one is, a thesis sort of report. There's issues there, but, following the cops is a sergeant and supervisors that also value that process. Every report is reviewed to check to see that the descriptions that they selected and the way they entered the fields is consistent with what's described in the narrative. Most of the sergeants do callbacks to the victims on every report to make sure that the needed elements are there. And this is all part of Compstat. It's not just a weekly meeting, it's a culture where all of this is taken seriously. And they do not hesitate at all in identifying just two hit patterns. If you see two incidents that, everything about them indicates that it's the same, perp or group of perps that committed those offenses, then you need to, put forward that two hit pattern. And there's a standard format. There's a pattern database. The detective squad, someone has to verify that they too agree it is a pattern. And then it's given a pattern number and it's in the database. In Compstat, you best be aware of your active 28-day patterns and what you're doing about them, how they're being addressed, are they being updated, that whole process. It's very sophisticated. Patterns give a mission to both patrol and investigative units about what they're looking for, what to pay attention to. I really think it's a good process. And I think we have many, talented analysts that are good at patterns. But I think sometimes, generally, again, analysts are hesitant maybe and, wouldn't put forth a two-hit pattern. They might wait till it's 4 or 6 or 8. And, the question would be why? Your agency culture needs to be such that it wants to address those patterns as quickly as possible because we know they'll continue if they're not addressed.
I think it's amazing when I think about the volume of work that NYPD has, given what you just told me. When you think about taking the time to identify patterns to make sure the report got right, even having sergeants call back the victim, we're talking about one of the biggest cities in the world. And so you can just imagine the volume of calls and crimes that the NYPD deals with. And yet there's this process in place to make sure that you got it right.
Yeah, and I don't think most people are aware of that. Certainly there's issues. Certainly, Compstat is not perfect, but there are very sophisticated auditing processes that go on in relation to Compstat. They're called quad audits. The Quality Assurance Division will just, randomly call up a precinct and say, guess what, you're up, and we need you to gather all of these reports together. So it's a whole unit dedicated to making sure that no one is downgrading crimes from robbery to burglary or burglary to larceny or something like that, or aggravated assaults to simple assaults. And it's not that it doesn't happen, but it doesn't happen for very long anywhere because so much of that is caught, even if whether it's intentional or unintentional. And so that's not widespread the way that it's described to be. There's all kinds of processes in place to ward against that. And Compstat is not about the numbers. The numbers just create a foundation for discussion, but it's really about, what is being done to address the issues and problems out there. Patterns play a big part in that. It's really about what could have been done, what should have been done to address these issues, to build better cases, because only through better cases do you get, the sentences you want on violent offenders. And there's a real sense of system and process there that is inspiring. And it's important to acknowledge that they have resources that are just incredible. I could pretty much launch the space shuttle from my desktop with what I had, to be able to access and query data. It's sophisticated in its simplicity. Years ago, all the cops had smartphones and or tablets, so that they could access a lot of this in the field. They're very capable of doing their own basic crime analysis, but then the same systems are capable of allowing analysts and others to do more sophisticated analysis with the data and map it and share it and export it and save it and build on it. And it's really like an analyst's amusement park. There's so much available. It's great. It really is.
So let's dive into Compstat a little bit more, because I often, when I ask an analyst if their police department does Compstat, most often I get the answer of, well, we do our version of Compstat. And so you can't tell me that.
No. We do the version of Compstat.
You did the version of Compstat. What is the version of Compstat?
I've come to believe now that I'm not sure that what NYPD does, can be replicated, because it really is about 25 years now in the making, even though it was pretty much Commissioners Kelly and Bratton, and then Kelly and then Bratton again, a couple others in between, but they all kept that basic framework going, kept up with the technology needed to make that happen, and kept it a priority. And so, that has led it to where it is today. When Bratton went back the second time, he made it his mission and his commitment to make it all about quality over quantity. We were going to raise the bar of discourse in Compstat to be really focused on the quality of the agency's approach to the issues. And it is a huge commitment. The technology is there. There are many, 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 many people, larger than most agencies, dedicated to the Compstat process. And it is a culture now. So everybody lives and breathes Compstat. And in between the Thursday Compstat are a whole bunch of other stats that take place. Many people aren't aware that there's Compstat every week, of course, but there is also traffic stat every week, which is the exact same format and process, but dedicated to crashes and crash prevention. It's just that crashes always get, second billing behind crime. So crashes really need their own Compstat to focus on those issues. And then there's, gun stat and crew stat and borough stat, where the different boroughs are preparing for crime stat. There's graffiti stat, neighborhood stat, spike stats, all kinds of other stats going on. So even if you're not, up for the big Compstat, you have other meetings to prepare for. It's taken very, very seriously. Everybody has to be in appropriate, full uniform and or business attire for Compstat. You have to be in your seat on time. There's nothing random or unorganized about Compstat. And I think the biggest piece about it is that the chiefs who are asking the questions already know the answers to the questions. They've put in their own hours and hours and hours of work in preparing for Compstat. So they already know what they're going to ask. They know where the focus is going to be, and they are looking for what they believe are the correct answers from whomever is behind the podium. Mm-hmm. At the normal level, I am always encouraging analysts who are involved in some kind of Compstat to at least get the analysis to the chief or the commander who's going to lead it. Get it to them ahead of time. Put your own ideas out there to tell them what to look at and what maybe to focus on, or what looks like it might be important. It doesn't mean that they'll listen to you, but at least you did the analysis. So put that out there. And the best would be if you did get together with your chief or commander ahead of time and went through it all, so that they are prepared to lead a meeting that is supposed to be focused on accountability and what's being done with these cases. It's not a presentation. It's not the analyst just sharing information with everyone so that they're aware of things. They're supposed to be aware before they get there. And I think that all of that is important, whether you have 5 officers or 500 officers or your NYPD. It's a mission of always getting better. It doesn't have to be complicated, but it does involve a commitment. You have to have those meetings regularly scheduled, follow the same format, be consistent about how you go about it. So then the analysis that supports it all has to be consistent in the same way. I think that's what pulls an agency together, so that everybody is working together too. That's a big issue at NYPD Compstat. about, how are you using the specialized units? When do you call in those specialized units? How is, patrol and the squad communicating to one another about the priorities? Patterns is that big piece. It's a lot.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to hear you talk about the actual Compstat. I think, unfortunately, just as you mentioned, that it's tough to replicate. And I think everybody is taking their turn and trying to replicate it. And in doing so, I think what seems to happen is they only grab about 5 or 6 points of the Compstat process to bring back to their agency. And then it's some kind of issues there, you get the adversarial process where sergeants or captains are getting yelled at, or, you get the ones where they're talking about, why did you only have so many calls for service on this particular shift on this particular night? And it led to some departments fudging some numbers and getting into that because the data became so important to their success, which it should, but it drove people to do not so good things. And then it's a lot of work, I think, for some of these analysts. I always talk about those 3-ring binders that, people are still producing week after week after week, that just becomes this assembly line for that 3-ring binder is, okay, Compstat's done on Thursday, Friday. Okay, we're preparing for next Thursday. And it just kind of starts all over again. The accountability is always good. And you use the data to drive decisions, as you should. But I think because people just wanted to replicate Compstat and the NYPD, you just had all these different versions and just some really bad duplication or mimicking, I would say, of the process.
I think a lot of those myths or misunderstandings, or whatever you might call it, continue to this day. It is absolutely intense, always, even when everything goes well. It's still an intense meeting, but it's also very professional. Nobody is swearing at anybody. There really isn't a lot of yelling. Every now and then there'll be some slight disagreements, but they don't last long, and everybody moves on. Everybody understands that the intensity is high. If you're behind the podium, you are certainly getting graded on your preparation and your performance there. That can either lead to good things or not lead to good things. But again, it's very professional. It's nobody's yelling. The chief of department, will typically open every meeting with saying, okay, we're gonna look at some issues and maybe some problems here, and we're gonna talk about some things, but this is how we get better. That's what it's about. And then he ends the meeting 3 hours later in the same way. Okay, so we talked about some things here. We know everybody is doing the very best they can with limited resources and limited time. I think we came up with some ideas, so let's go out there. We're proud of all of you. Everybody's doing good work. Be safe. And it really is about that. It's all they want to see is a sense of urgency. They're in New York City, they are dealing with very real violence. They want to be sure that every command level person, and even, below command level, but that they realize these are people, these are victims. It doesn't matter the story behind it all. A victim is a victim is a victim, and we want fewer victims. And so that's what this is all about. I think that, in smaller agencies with, not quite so much violence, perhaps, there's still a place for a meeting that is serious and structured and consistent. There's elements of accountability, but of course it can be, toned down a bit. If I were, an analyst in an agency like that, I would want there to be a Compstat process, because it creates that level of demand for your work and for your analysis. It's the process that every analysis-driven agency, really has to go through. It doesn't have to be quite so intense, but, it should be serious.
Excellent. All right. Well, let's take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about Ddax. We'll talk about IACA, and we'll talk about favorite first jobs.
Okay.
You're listening to Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. We'll be right back.
Hey there, everybody. This is Albert Mesa, and I'm here to ask you a very important question. Have you ever done a sit-along with the dispatcher? If the answer is no, and you're currently an analyst, you're missing out on a huge piece of the data puzzle. Not only will you open your eyes to how data is captured, entered, and coded, you'll see how calls are prioritized and dispatched and get a true feel for CAD data. You'll get to see it in a whole new light and use it as a tool in your analysis. And who doesn't want to sit with a true first responder who probably saved a life right before they sat with you?
Hi, this is Nadia Tuominen, and I just wanted to say, get off your cell phone. How are you going to be perceptive and observational if everything you perceive and observe is on a tiny rectangular screen? Not okay. Get off your cell phone.
Welcome back, Deb. I want to talk about Ddax now. And so for those that may not be aware of Ddax, just explain what Ddax is.
So Ddax is data-driven approaches to crime and traffic safety. And I think every analyst should want to get exposed to, get invested in, and support their agency in data-driven approaches to crime and traffic safety. It's been around for, give or take, 12 years now. Its original intention was to just address a lack of focus on traffic safety. The Department of Transportation, and specifically the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, was recognizing that there had been a de-emphasis on traffic enforcement and traffic safety. Really wanted to work with the Department of Justice to re-emphasize that, to stress that traffic safety is public safety, and to identify the place-based similarities between crashes and crime, and the acknowledgement that crashes and crime do regularly occur in close proximity to each other, and really help agencies to just use data to address these issues. Since those early days, it has evolved significantly to the point now where I really feel that Ddax is simply good strategic policing. There are 7 guiding principles that focus on identified desired outcomes, data collection, data analysis, partner and stakeholder police community engagement, strategic operations, information sharing, monitoring, evaluating, and adjusting, which is my favorite principle and critically important. And then it just, cycles around in that way to constantly keep your agency eye, focused on those desired outcomes of really improved public safety, and incorporating all of those principles into what you do. So I kind of wish, we didn't have to have an acronym to it, because it really is just good strategic policing. If that were not enough, Ddax workshops are free, so any agency can seek to host a workshop. We would send out a subject matter expert team to work with your team of commanders, supervisors, and analysts to just look at how you might put these principles into place, how you might develop just a more coordinated, system towards looking at both crime and traffic safety. There's evidence-based course that accompanies Ddax. There's nationally certified training with Ddax. It's really a comprehensive resource. And for whatever reason, it to me anyway, does not get the attention in the analytical fields that I think it should. Certainly hundreds of analysts have been involved in Ddax related operations or been to a Ddax workshop, but it's not, as much enthusiasm around it as I would like to see. I think there's some analysts out there who are missing out on this opportunity.
One of the things I like about the training, it's one of the few situations where the analyst is at the training and higher ups are at the training. You can have police chiefs and analysts at the same training. Yes.
As far as I know, there really isn't anything else out there like that, except Christopher Abruzzo and I have both worked for IALEST over the years, and we developed a building capacity workshop that was the same setting on a lot of the same topics. But, the ability as an analyst to actually get off site, or at least into the training room, and really sit down with your chief or commanders and supervisors and talk about some of these data issues is a huge opportunity. And they always go the same way. The commanders tend to think that, sure, this all makes sense. We can do this. We have an analyst. The analyst is, kind of at the other extreme, worried about all of the data quality issues and thinking this is not going to be quite so easy. And then supervisors, are in the middle, and ultimately the weight really does, fall on them to make these things happen in the street. So there are really interesting dynamics around it, but the principles are very sound, and I think they're even more critical today than they ever were, to really be thinking about these issues, be thinking about how you better engage with the community, be, confident about what your desired outcomes are, and be monitoring, evaluating, and adjusting in the pursuit of those outcomes. So it's been just another blessing of my career to be in this environment. It allows me to visit agencies all over the country, work with different analysts from all over the country.
So I guess just to drive it home, can you just maybe give an example, maybe a scenario that would come from Ddax, just so the listeners get a good idea of some of the principles that you're talking about?
Sure. Really, from an analyst perspective, many analysts don't do anything related to traffic or crash issues. It's just not, focused for most analysts. The data can be difficult to access and can be very messy. But there is, absolutely a relationship between crime and traffic safety issues. If for no other reason than the reality is that most property crimes, do involve a vehicle. People aren't walking away with flat screen TVs or, stuff they've stolen from a house. They're typically driving away. So, and most agencies still have to respond to crashes and, spend their limited resources on responding to crashes, dealing with crashes, that all of those issues. By really looking at your public safety issues in your community, identifying those high activity locations, those, hot spots, identifying where they overlap, and really, communicating across your agency so that those focused on traffic are communicating those issues back to General Patrol, that patrol and detectives are, communicating their crime issues back to the people who are making the most traffic stops and who are watching for suspect vehicles, and creating that environment in your agency. And then especially, I've really become interested in just the past couple of years at that evaluation piece, really, confidently developing a way to determine what does work in your agency. Are the things that we're doing all the time in terms of operations and deployment, are they really having an impact? Could they be done better? How do we know? Why do we do the same things over and over again? Developing ways in which to monitor deployment and then evaluate that impact, and especially evaluate for any unintended harm. There's always the chance that with the best of intentions, you are either over policing in one area or under policing in another area, watching for that and then adjusting, adjust quickly if something is not working well. And if everything is going great, then adjust in ways that will allow you to do more of that. I think typically, analysts haven't been so well utilized in those areas when they absolutely have the skill set and the capacity to do that. It just needs to be an agency priority.
Yeah. When I had Christopher Bruce on last year, he questioned whether police departments and police chiefs would have the palate for Ddax, given the racial issues that have gone on there. What has Ddax done to address some of those concerns?
We, in terms of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, this month planning to put out the new, what they're calling Ddax 2.0, the new manuals, the principles reorganized and restated to address that very issue. Nice. And to put the emphasis on engagement rather than enforcement. And I think it's critically important that the times we're in demand that. It's what we should be doing in the profession of policing. And I think, in order to do that well and to know where your agency stands on, not on the issues, but I mean, in terms of how you deploy your resources, where you are in terms of addressing any issues, you need to be evaluating that data.
Mm-hmm.
And, not just evaluating stops or enforcement efforts when someone calls you on it, but to be doing it consistently as an agency and watch how things are progressing in that way, being aware and being able to, in a really timely way, answer any questions that come about those issues. So I think, as a model, Ddax has put in an awful lot of time to better address those issues and, talk to agencies about it. A huge de-emphasis on enforcement and a huge re-emphasis on real engagement, not just having community members into the guard room for bagels and coffee, but, real interaction about the issues as they see it, and then articulating to them how the police agency plans to respond, seeing how they feel about that, building off of that, creating real partnerships. Ddax workshop is a great way to just sit back for at least a day and think about these issues, think about whether you have the data to be able to analyze all of this, or, if you don't, how can you create it? Really seek to actively address these issues. We've also seen that traffic safety does matter, even though we've had a year of this pandemic now where the driver population decreased dramatically, and yet across the nation, fatality rates are the highest they've been in years. There's no denying that crashes kill people.
Mm-hmm.
And even though the fatality rate until this year had been going down, improved vehicle safety and all those things have made a difference, better seatbelt use. But there still is a whole new population of people who are very seriously injured in traffic crashes. And so the need to encourage people to drive safely has not changed at all. We just need to change our approach to that.
Very good. And then with IALEST, should analysts join IALEST?
Well, IALEST has an awful lot of resources available to analysts.
Mm-hmm.
There is a 13-part training series that is focused on data and data analysis, primarily with using Access and Excel. There's a section on using Arc Pro, and that's free. All you have to do is go to IALEST.org and set up an account. And then anyone, you don't have to have any connection to Ddax. Anyone can access that training series and make use of it. And if you complete all 13, IACA will give you a certificate of completion for that series.
Nice.
Beyond that, IALEST is more, as a broad agency, focused on all kinds of issues, including building national standards for training and officer certification and decertification and nationally certified training process, things like that. But there are certainly resources for analysts there too.
Let's move on. I want to talk a little bit about the IACA. IACA is where we met at one of the conferences years ago. And so late last year, I put together a top 10 list. IACA turned 30, and I come up with a top 10 list of most influential. And I was curious to get your take if you have a top 5 of who have influenced the IACA the most.
Sure. So I listened very intently to your top 10 list, and I have no disagreements at all with the people you identified. Certainly we owe so much to those who founded the whole association. I owe a great deal to IACA as a professional association, and I think joining IACA should be the first step for any new analyst. And I pretty much knew everyone on your top 10 list, and they were good choices. So my top 5 list is, I think, perhaps more personal to me and my development as an analyst through the association. So certainly just across the board in terms of my career and my involvement in IACA, Christopher Bruce is at the top of the list. I think without a doubt, he is one of the not just most skilled analysts I'm aware of, but his ability to just be aware of concepts and be aware of applying those skills in all sorts of different settings across all platforms. He's a unique individual and has pretty much dedicated his whole career to the advancement of IACA. And, I think we should just all aspire to be the analysts that Christopher is, at least in knowledge and skill set. Very close behind, and I owe Christopher for the introduction to NOAA. I was very blessed early in my career when I first got exposed to ArcGIS and had only the most basic of skills to get some dots on a map. The chief I had at the time wanted better, and somehow or another there was grant funding or there was something available. And NOAA and Steve Hick would come out to my office in Newton for about a week every month for a year or more. Yeah, it was quite the opportunity to just, help us to build up our GIS capabilities, both on the technical side and then for our skill set. And of course, Christopher would always join us for these efforts. It was huge in helping me to develop my skills with ArcGIS. So of course, you can't really work with NOAA without then being just invested in the IACA. And, I hope his involvement continues as we move forward. He's a great analyst and a great historian of the whole process. And I also want to recognize Anthony Abruzzo, who now runs the New York State Crime Analysis Centers. And Anthony was an analyst in Philadelphia. I met him through Ddax. He eventually gravitated north and does a great job in running those centers and in getting all of the analysts in those centers to be IACA members and to be involved in IACA. He hasn't been involved in the traditional sense of serving on committees and so forth, but he's been a cheerleader out there for IACA, with all of the analysts that he works with. And I think that has spread to kind of rejuvenating the membership in a small degree. He's been a big supporter of mine. And then I wanted to mention Brian Hill. I know perhaps, not a lot of newer IACA members, remember Brian from Glendale, Arizona, but oh my goodness, I have never known, anyone who was willing to devote the time and energy he would devote in answering just any of the either most basic or most obscure questions you might have about, how to do something.
Yeah.
I would always tell him, when he would respond to my questions, I'd say, Brian, I don't know how you get your own work done when you're willing to support everybody like this. And he just so knowledgeable, but so gracious in his knowledge. I was, blessed to receive the first Brian Hill Memorial Scholarship at our last conference. And I was just so touched. And it really did inspire me to try to be more like Brian in responding to any analysts that I have the capability to help.
Yeah. I mean, we could definitely create a publication just based on his listserv posts. I mean, I still have a lot of them. I know I don't have every single one of them, but I've kept a lot of the listserv posts over the years.
Wow.
I know that he would write several pages sometimes on answering the questions.
Oh, he was great in that way and still had a wit about him and, didn't act like it was any big deal in terms of what he was doing. And then I just wanted to recognize my friend and peer, Trina Cook. Trina has been, pretty quietly, I think, but in a very dedicated manner, been involved in IACA for a very long time, served on a number of committees. And she brings to the association a real sense of pride and dedication in her agency, in what her contributions are to her agency. She has been, doing what she does at her agency, I think, almost as long as I've been doing what I've been doing across multiple agencies. You don't see so much of that these days. I just think she brings a fresh perspective. It doesn't matter how long she's been doing what she's doing. She still seeks to come up with new ideas and new ways to serve her agency. And I think she creates a good, model for people about how to be a good analyst and how to best serve your agency. And I think we sometimes don't give enough attention to that, how to be the best at where you're at and serve who you work with, try to keep everybody safe, and maintain your level of enthusiasm all along the way for what you do and for the profession in general.
Yeah, and I agree with that with Trina. She's actually on my list to have onto the show. And I thank you for giving me a list. A lot of people that I asked thought they were going to be mean if they just named 5. And obviously it's tough, right? Because
I did agonize over it.
So many people have done so many things, and you feel that if you don't mention everybody, that somebody's going to get feelings get hurt. But I mean, it is really tough, but I appreciate it.
I had a few others. I don't want to disregard my whole MACA gang. And we know what MACA meant to my career. Yeah. And I wish, every state had a state association.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about running for the IACA board?
Have I thought about it? Yeah. No. Yes, I've thought about it, obviously. Yes. I think, you have to be in that very unique position where you have been able to, rise to a level of a position and knowledge and skill set about the profession, yet still have the time to dedicate to it, because IACA is an operation. Mm-hmm. And, I know it takes a lot of time and a lot of attention, and I just have never felt that I've been in the position to dedicate that to the task. But I admire everyone who has, and I wonder how they do it all. I know that Mary spends an awful lot of extra hours in her office.
Sure.
Trying to do everything that she does. So maybe someday, but I've served on a variety of committees. I am on the conference committee.
And crossing our fingers, we have it.
Yeah.
Yes. Excellent. And you mentioned MACA being president there. Do you have, maybe something you're particularly proud of as president that the association was able to accomplish under your leadership?
I don't know that it has, anything to do with my, leadership per se. Maybe just the timing was right and things went along well. But I think as an association, we stayed very active along the way. And these were all the days when email was still kind of new. But we held monthly meetings all the time. And we would often talk about, maybe we should spread these out. It's hard to get a speaker and a topic going every month. But we never really did. I think certainly across Massachusetts and New England, raised the bar and raised the discourse about crime analysis, and have maintained a very active membership, up to today. And I haven't been immediately involved for years, but all along the way, it was a really good mix of sworn and civilian analysts. And I just think it's a good crew, and we've supported each other along the way and improved the analysis across the MACA region. So I'm proud of it.
Nice. I'm going to move on. I thought of a question this week that you're going to be the first one to answer it.
Oh boy.
So
let me sit up straight.
No pressure though, right? So let's say the president created a new position, law enforcement analyst director, and nominated you for the position. What are some initiatives you would create?
Well, I don't think it's too hard to think about, because we've talked so much about these issues. Mm-hmm. First off the bat, I would try to put more emphasis on the science and profession of policing, less emphasis on always referring to everything that we do as law enforcement, because it doesn't matter if you're a cop in the Bronx or you're an officer in a small town. They're all spending most of their time helping, serving, guiding, directing, assisting, saving, and doing all of that on their shifts, and occasionally having to enforce the law. And it's just a tool. So it might sound like semantics, but especially at, that kind of 30,000 foot view, I think we have to bring the discussion, back to policing. And that's not, something I came up with on my own. That's something that Dr. Kelling emphasized to me over and over again. And I think that's important, and it's important especially for our times now.
So the first thing you're going to do is tell the president you need to change the name of the position.
Yes, right off the bat. Because I have imagined that my phone rings and it is the president on the other end asking for my input. And then I would just put a huge emphasis on data and data as a public safety issue. It's just our ability in this country to know what's going on with crime is just, it's abysmal. It's ridiculous. We know about, the third day into every month, what the unemployment rate is and how many jobs were created and all that. And yet we have to wait, 18 months or so to get a count on, where the nation stands in terms of crime. That's just ridiculous to me. I have no faith in the change to NIBRS. I don't even know where that stands now after the pandemic, but I don't think that's going to improve things. So I think that's a ridiculous situation. So we need to fix it on the national, FBI level of counting crime. And then we need to just emphasize quality data and quality analysis at the local level and at every level of the local level, so that is improved. We need to improve the technology. We need to improve the expectations that agencies will accurately report their numbers. And we need to improve the abilities of average agencies to utilize that data and to conduct analysis. So I think we are tiptoeing forward in that direction. I think maybe in the past 2 or 3 years, there's been greater progress. Everybody knows they should be using data. They should have an analyst, and, many have acted upon that. But I think we're still, just making such slow progress towards something that should be better in 2021. And that's not a reflection on any individual's ability or any agency's focus on analysis. It's just a general sense across the country that it's not prioritized. Vendors take advantage of agencies. I just think it can be better, and it has to be better. That would result in saving lives, and it would result in changing the tenor of attitudes towards policing. It would just be better for all of us. And then I guess the fourth would just be to bring in the right people to assist in that process. Hopefully, ultimately, raise the status of crime analysts and the crime analyst profession.
Very good. All right, let's move on to favorite first jobs. And this is a call-in segment, and it was based on when I had Steve Gottlieb on the show, and he told me that he was a radio DJ on Sunday mornings in high school. So I started asking folks to give me their favorite first jobs. Do you have a favorite first job?
Oh, I do. Yes. So trying to think how old I was when I started. It had to be only 14 or 15, but I had the opportunity to work for a veterinarian on weekends, after school vacations, summers, all through college. We would have office hours for small animals in the morning, and then, take a lunch break and then go out to deal with horses and cows and large animals in the afternoon, which often involved, traipsing across the countryside to different farms. And it was just a great experience. I like animals. I grew up on a farm, so it involved getting knocked around every now and then by larger animals or scratched or bitten by smaller animals. but it was a great experience. Doc, as we called him, was an incredibly knowledgeable man. He saw the good in every animal we dealt with. But one of his favorite things to do would be when we were leaving a farm, it was always my job to jump out of the van and open the gate and then close the gate. And often when I was closing the gate, he would drive off, without me. And it amused him always, no matter how often he did it. So I'd have to just sit there or stand there and wait for him to come back. And then, he'd say, "Oh, you probably weren't sure if I was going to come back." "Oh, yeah, I might leave me here." And no matter how many times we did it, it was fun. But it was a hard job. I worked hard. I got messed up a lot, but it was a great first job.
Nice. All right. So I got a couple of callers on the line, and we're going to see what their favorite first jobs are. First caller is Eurissa. Eurissa, what is one of your favorite first jobs?
So my favorite first job, it was me becoming my own entrepreneur or boss. I actually created my own business of a water girl in Dominican Republic, where I used to deliver water to people. So that was my first job because I got to make up my hours and my time, and I got to charge people whatever I wanted to just to deliver water. So my favorite by far.
That's interesting. And if you haven't listened to Eurissa's story, that is fascinating. I highly recommend her episode. It's funny. She didn't say how old she was there, but I do picture a little Eurissa running
around selling water.
Yes. So it's no wonder she went on to accomplish as much as she did, being so smart. All right. And then next on the line is Matt. Matt, what's one of your favorite first jobs?
Hey, Jason, thanks for having me. I'm a longtime listener, first-time caller here. The first job that I had that was great was I was working as a young boy at a pizza place. The motto they had there for the pizza place, it was a local place here in California, a pizza factory, and their motto was, "We toss them, they're awesome." And so when I was young, 15, 16 years old, I learned how to toss a pizza up in the air, pizza dough, and make pizza. And it's a skill that I still have today. And so my kids absolutely love it. When it's pizza day, we go down to the local store, buy some dough or make some dough of our own or what have you. And then I take that dough and spin it out into a pizza, and they love watching it. They think I'm the greatest because I can toss a pizza.
That's pretty cool. That's definitely something that carries on with the rest of your life.
That is a real talent. I mean, I can barely, make a pizza on dough that's provided for me, much less toss a pizza.
Yeah. I stick to frozen.
Yeah.
All right. And then next on the line is Danelle. Danelle, what's one of your favorite first jobs?
One of my favorite first jobs was seriously working at Kentucky Fried Chicken. And when I got there, I thought there was no way I'm ever going to like this restaurant and ever going to eat this food again. But actually, I loved it. And I learned how to make coleslaw.
Oh, knowing Danelle, I would have never guessed that. If meeting Danelle, I would have never guessed that she once worked at Kentucky Fried Chicken.
And I wonder if she still ever has Kentucky Fried Chicken, because Danelle is pretty dedicated to healthy eating and that sort of stuff.
Well, I'm sure when she's competing in her bodybuilding competitions, I'm sure Kentucky Fried Chicken is a no-no.
It's not on the menu.
Yes. All right. Next up is Noah. Noah, what's one of your favorite first jobs?
Well, my favorite first job that I ever had was as an undergrad. I was a school bus driver, believe it or not. And I picked up 45 kids. I got to, drive out into the beautiful part of rural Illinois around a lake and pick up about 9 kids from affluent families, and then came in to a little town and loaded up the bus. It was chaos on wheels. And what it taught me for the profession of crime analysis is that I needed to know how to multitask, to be able to drive and look in the mirror and in the rearview mirror and looking forward to all at the same time, and how to deal with chaos on the fly. And that job certainly prepared me for that. And be prepared if you become a crime analyst, particularly in an agency that has lots of crime and activity, to deal with chaos, because it happens every day. Your job will be different.
Can't you just picture Noah just driving the school bus and looking in that big rear view mirror that they have?
You know what's funny? I can picture Noah being a bus driver, but for some reason, and this is probably the bus drivers that I had, I can't picture one of my bus drivers going on to accomplish everything that Noah has.
Yeah, no.
I can't picture the other direction. For some reason, I see Noah being a bus driver, but I can't see it the other way. So
yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And then next on the line is Jeffrey. Jeffrey, what's one of your favorite first jobs?
Well, I was a bit of a vagabond in my early days. So I was a ski bum for a couple of years in Vermont, worked for a resort, and I was a bellman there, bellhop. And one winter I had a ski accident because I skied during the day and worked at night, had a ski accident, broke both my thumbs. I had a hard cast on one and I had a soft cast on the other, but I still worked as a bellhop. And the funny thing about it is I never made better money because people felt sorry for me. And then they ended up carrying their own bags.
Very good. And you ski.
That's great.
And you ski, right?
I do. Knock on wood. I have never broken anything yet while I'm skiing. Both thumbs had to be a pretty serious fall to make that happen. Ouch.
Yeah, and to still go to work as a bellhop. But as he said, they carried their own bags, and it sounds like they still kept them. So
that's great. Those are great stories.
Well, that's favorite first jobs. All right, so then our last segment to the show is Words to the World, and this is where I give the guests the last word. Deb, you can promote any idea that you want to. What are your words to the world?
Just want to encourage analysts to fight the good fight out there. Define themselves as professionals. Define themselves as being professionals in positions where they need the tools that they need. They need the access to the data that they need. And, they need to be treated with a level of professionalism that will allow them to do their best work. If they don't have that everywhere, spend your time building up your skills and doing the best that you can, and then take that on to perhaps a bigger agency and just try to carry that off so that a lot of those issues we talked about, that they're dealt with at the source, that you can do your job to the best of your ability and not be held back by some of these artificial obstacles. And then in conjunction with that, I would encourage analysts to network, because, that is ultimately how I got to many of the positions I've been at and the exciting adventures that I've had along the way of this career. And keep in touch with the people that you meet, the people who are perhaps involved in the world at different levels. Ultimately, that's what got me to NYPD. That's what I fall back on now when I need guidance and support. I think all of that combined is what can lead to a satisfying career.
Very good. Well, I leave every guest with you've given me just enough to talk bad about you later.
Yeah.
I do appreciate you being on the show, Deb. Thank you so much, and you be safe.
Oh, thank you. Take care.
Thank you for joining us today on Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. We hope you not only enjoyed the show, but also learned something new. For more information on our guests and information relating to today's topic, please visit our website at leapodcast.com. Special thanks to The Rough and Tumble for our theme song. For more of their music, you can visit their website at theroughandtumble.com. Also thanks to Kyle McMullen for our show logo. For more of his design, please visit his website at moderntype.com. The show is hosted, recorded, and edited by Jason Elder and written by me, Mindy. You can contact us both via the LEA Podcast website. Please join us again next time as we interview another expert in this great field.